What I learned in business school was nothing like the real business. They only net profit $1 billion a year off of all the groceries that they sell. People would be shocked by how little some of these massive corporations actually bring home.
One of the most potent questions that was ever asked me is, what was your profit?
Life is a pitch. It's simply that. It is a pitch, and it is fun. Well, let's make sure that you're being sold what you want and you're selling what you actually want to sell. I really just love selling. It's the easiest thing on the planet if you believe in yourself. Let's buckle up. By the way, my name's JL. This is Sell Anything.
Welcome to the Sell Anything podcast. I have with me Jeremy Brockbank. He is a man amongst men. He knows all of the men like that are making worlds happen in retail. Like the things he puts on is incredible. And so Jeremy, we want to hear about what you do with Volcanic Retail to the collective to all, like,
I don't know. It's kind of interesting. Thanks for having me on here. I'm really kind of an ecosystem guy. So anything that touches retail, I try to get. I kind of build unique areas out of it because there's a lot of synergies between the people I already know that are trying to touch different parts of retail. So we've got a few different sides of what we do. We have a tech platform called Volcanic Retail, and that connects retail brands and buyers using predictive analytics and eventually AI. We have our podcast, Retail War Games.
That's true.
Yeah. Down at Silicon Slopes. And typically we film CEOs of some of the country's biggest brands or retailers. Okay. And we hear their stories, and it's pretty casual, which is kind of fun. And then we have Retail Collective, which is events that we put on 3 times a year, where we'll have maybe 100 or 200 CEOs of brands, and we just kind of collaborate and hear from the best practices. And so, yeah, we're kind of in all different little parts of trying to redefine retail.
Awesome.
Find excuses to like talk to the same person again.
I love it.
Yeah.
I love it. So I went to the event in Park City. It's Stein Eriksen Lodge. Is that what it's called?
Yeah.
Beautiful. Incredible.
Yeah, that's fun, wasn't it?
And I was in awe because I was like, this is Jeremy, my neighbor, who just like his son plays football with my son. Like, yeah, this is just my neighbor, but dude is on fire. It's incredible.
Oh, thank you very much.
And the people you had in the room it was mind boggling.
It is. And you know, the interesting thing about, so on the tech side of the world, everyone like in Utah knows of, you know, Silicon Slopes and Slope Summit and all that kind of stuff. But retail is broken up to 117 different channels.
Oh,
so like the pet buyers will never talk to the buyers that have, you know, that are yoga studios, right?
Right.
And the drug store chains will never talk to consumer electronic stores. And so all those brands, they kind of stay in their own verticals and they don't get to know each other. So what's interesting is about 20 years ago when I first started in retail, in the state of Utah, we only had 5 national brands. Okay. So we had Browning, and we had OGO and Zag, Skull Candy. And what was interesting about it is some of those kind of the core people that built those ended up kind of spinning out and doing other brands. Okay. And now Utah has over 100 national brands that are based from it, just 20 years later. Wow. And so the ecosystem in retail is every bit as strong as the tech side, but it's just never been brought together because you'll have CEOs from, you know, Traeger that has a phenomenal business, but they've never known the people at Ivy City Co. Or the people at Just Ingredients or whatever the deal is. And when in retail, my past kind of what we've been doing for the last 15 years, we've helped a little over 600 brands expand their retail presence into stores. Okay. And I've noticed that 95% of what the brand CEO does is identical no matter which channel it's in. Okay. And so they can actually learn a ton from each other, and they're not competing against each other.
It's wild.
And so what happened is, you know, we started the Retail War Games podcast, and we'd sit down and we'd have a CEO in from maybe Overstock, and then we'd have a CEO in from Maverick, and they'd overlap. And for the first time, they'd meet each other. Mm-hmm. And they were excited because they knew the other person's name, but they never had a reason to sit down. And I noticed that this was a continual pattern. Okay. And so I said, why don't we throw together kind of a lunch with 5 or 10 of them, and you just kind of get together and I could kind of introduce them. And then I just kept going.
Yeah.
And eventually we had 150 CEOs that were like, yeah, let's do this lunch thing. And so we broke it up into 3 different lunches, and people were really excited. So we thought, okay, I guess we're just going to put together Retail Collective and spit it out. But it's been awesome.
I love it, man. So a theme that I've seen as the podcast has evolved is people are so curious about, and we broke it down into a framework, right? So there's the peak that typically people who come on a podcast have reached a peak of something. Like they've succeeded at something. Retail is your peak of like, you've dominated it. But before anybody can climb to the peak, they find themselves in a pit where there's like,
I've been in a lot of pits.
And so we like to hear about those a little bit, because the cool thing is the idea behind this is life's a pitch. And so it's how are we going to spin it so that we end up winning? And so because the pattern it seems to be what you're seeing that is somewhat the path that gets you out of the pit to the peak. But tell us a little bit about the failures, a little bit about the pit.
Yeah.
And then exactly how you got to the peak. Because dude, again, I wish that I could clearly articulate what he's put together is incredible. Like it was mind boggling.
Yeah.
I was in awe.
It is fun. I mean, you'll go to a conference and there'll be, 100 national brand CEOs getting together and collaborating and enjoying each other and talking. And then it spits out another 50 or 100 new brand CEOs that want to come to the next one.
Right.
So it's been awesome. But on the failure side, I've had some really significant setbacks.
Yeah. And there's lessons in them. That's what we're super interested in.
So, so I had, I'm actually in a field that I didn't anticipate being in.
Okay.
I did my master's to be an athletic director at University of Oklahoma.
Wow.
And so,
way different.
Yeah, very different. So I was working for the basketball and football, thought I'd go be an AD, so just graduating, and I was chatting with Florida and BYU, and then the financial collapse happened in 2008.
Okay.
And every athletic department went on a freeze. And so I couldn't even get a job.
Wow.
So nobody was hiring in my field. Yeah. So I'm like, well, I have to support my family. My wife thinks that I'm probably the biggest disappointment and failure that's ever existed. I can't even she just spent, a couple of years helping me get through grad school. And then I just said, just get me a job. Because that's all there comes a point in life where you're just like, look, have any sort of job, I don't care what it is so much better of a feeling than being unemployed. Yeah. Because when I was unemployed, you'd wake up every morning and I'd feel this huge rush of like anxiety. Yeah. Of like, oh my gosh, what am I going to do now? Like I've got to do X, Y, or Z. I have to make sure this is productive. And I noticed only on Saturdays and Sundays could my brain go relax again. Okay. It was like no one else is working. I guess I'm okay. Yeah. But it was super stressful for those periods. And so there's a company that's like, well, we're hiring. And they sold cardboard toilets, which was crazy. I was just like,
cardboard toilets.
Yeah. They said that they'd make it for FEMA and stuff, but they weren't selling it to anybody. Yeah. And so I'm like, I'll take it. This sounds amazing. And, I was so easily persuaded to take a job. Yeah. And it was really rocky time for those who weren't in the workplace in 2008. Right. And what ended up happening is after about a month, they're like, you know what, you've done a good job, but what we're going to do is we're going to now pay you in stock because we think that we have some billionaire that's going to buy us and all this stuff. And I was so stupid that I was like, and they're like, and we'll give you a VP of sales position. I'm like, this is great. Yeah. And then I just never got actually paid money. So a year later, I was still not getting paid money and I couldn't get another job. Yeah. So we had tons of credit card debt and everything else. And eventually that company obviously just went out. I ended up going to another company it was called Goal Zero, and they're still around. But we did really well with Goal Zero. Yeah. They ended up being the fastest growing brand on the 5,000.
Really?
I was lucky enough to put them into Target, Lowe's, Office Depot, Home Depot, Best Buy, Walmart, and they grew from 100,000 sales to 17 million in 18 months.
Okay.
But I was only getting paid
17 million in 18 months. I just want to make sure everybody heard that.
Yeah.
100 grand to 17 mil.
Yeah. So my take home was $17 an hour.
Of 17 mil. That sounds fair.
Yeah, that sounds about fair. But it was supposed to get substantial commissions.
Yeah.
And so when the first big commission, it was the one to lead off to pay me that it paid first was Lowe's. And it's supposed to be $100,000 commission. Mm-hmm. And my boss comes in and he's like, Jeremy, I think what we're going to do is we're just going to kind of have this, all of the salespeople that we've now hired, which was now, we went from 1 to 8. And like, we're just going to split all commissions across all the salespeople for everything. And I thought, you got to be kidding me.
Yeah, that's frustrating. So
one thing led to another. And basically I didn't make anything and I lost money working for that company. Mm. And so it was like 2 major strikes. And at this point, my wife thinks I'm cursed. And it's just like, okay. It's just like, this is just.
And then when she thinks that, you're like, I might be cursed.
I might be cursed. Yeah.
Yeah.
And then, but it was really interesting because a lot of the stuff is like, I came from a mom who, she had 11 kids, and my dad died when I was 4. So we didn't have like business mentors growing up.
Right.
My mom she was very much like, I would say lower middle class, maybe middle class. But she didn't have a lot of business sense. She was an incredible mom, but she wouldn't give us great advice. Like, for example, she was the one that would always tell me, okay, Jeremy, I want you to learn how to work. So you go push carts at Dan's Foods for $4.25 an hour. Yeah. Like, yeah, okay, well, that gives you work ethic, but also jobs that pay $10 an hour also would give me work ethic. Right. But she felt like there was almost like there's a moral goodness to taking the cheapest job there was. Mm, and so when I got myself into different predicaments, I didn't really have anybody to go to. Like somebody to be like, yeah, you probably shouldn't work for stock only or whatever, all these things. So I ended up getting myself kind of trapped.
Yeah.
And, I'd had a business degree. So I think I was confident in like that I'd make smart decisions. But what I realized is what I learned in business school had nothing to do with what the real business world was. So I made so many bad decisions.
I almost think you should say that again.
Yeah. Well, what I learned in business school was nothing like the real business. And that's absolutely the truth.
100%. That's the truth. I agree with you 100%.
Yeah.
We get our degree out of obedience, right? Like, that's the next step. We go get a degree. Cool. Now I have to pay for that degree, but it's not paying me at all.
No, it's not. In fact, even the degree side. So my master's degree, it's an MED at Oklahoma. I mean, I paid hundreds of thousands of dollars of that through the last few years. And it's brought me exactly $0 back.
Yeah.
Absolutely no benefit at all. Nobody asked me if I have a degree from there or what I did or whatever. It just doesn't matter.
It never comes up in any conversation.
Never. No one. No. Because people hire you because what you could make for them, not what you've done in the past. They look at somebody like, are you going to bring me money? And so, in fact, a lot of my best employees are people that probably underperformed in school, but they don't have a safety net and they just have crazy drive.
Yeah.
Those are the people that have continually been my best assets.
Yes.
Somebody that I poached from like, a fast food chain that was a really good manager.
Yeah.
Rather than somebody that just came out with, an MBA at a good school. Every single time that one's done better for me, which is really weird, but that's just how it is.
Dude, that's the pattern I've seen as well. And so this is not me saying that degrees are bad. If you want to be a doctor, we need people who are trained who can do a surgery because they have their degree. Yeah. If you want to do those type of specialties, we need those for sure. But it's not necessary.
No, it's not.
Yeah.
It absolutely is not necessary. But there's just we didn't learn things like really basic finance even in our business degree 20 years ago.
Right.
So like, for example, I got my, we learned macroeconomics and microeconomics and big picture stuff as if we were going to go work and predict, like if we were a trader, like a daily trader, that would have been great. But for somebody just with really basic information on basic economics, they just assume that you knew things. And so they never taught things.
Right.
So like, for example, when I got out of school, I had this credit card, and I think the credit card interest rates were more bearable back then. It was like 12% or something.
Yeah.
But what was interesting about it is I thought, the 12% was not like, I had no idea that was accruing near the rate of the total amount. Like I just looked at a tiny number and I'm like, how could 12% hurt me if I've got 5,000? Yeah. If it's a $5,000 limit, 12% sounds tiny. Yeah. But what you don't realize is, the amount that you're paying on the principal is tiny, and basically you're going to end up spending 4 times as much on the 5,000 that you would have just done if you just would have paid it out in cash. But just like really basic economic principles, they just never covered it. My mom never covered it. Yeah. So it got me in so many stupid, sticky situations early on.
100%. Do same path. I get it. I get it. So in the 11, where did you fall in the mix?
I was youngest.
You're the baby.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah, I was the baby. It's kind of a misleading thing because my siblings were all older, and so I actually felt like I was raised alone, which was weird because I had a sister above me who was really into the social life, and so I never saw her. Yeah. And then my next oldest brother was 6 years older than me.
Gotcha.
So it's enough of a distance to not really see each other at all.
He's a senior in high school when you're in 6th grade.
Yeah, so exactly right. Yeah. So basically, I felt like, and most of them moved out by the time I could actually really remember things. Right. So you kind of felt, just because I had 2 sisters directly over me and I didn't hang out with them, that you had a big family, but you really felt like you're a single child too.
It makes perfect sense. Yeah. Perfect sense. So we navigate through goal 0. Yeah. And you dude, 17 mil from 100,000 to 17 million.
Yeah, it was insane.
Months. It's like almost $1 million a month increase.
Yeah, it was. Yeah, 17,000%. It was the 8th fastest growing company on the 5,000, fastest growing retail product.
And they do solar panels for like hunters and things like that.
Yeah, It was kind of crazy because they shouldn't have grown at that type of a rate. It was kind of a niche need. Mm-hmm. It wasn't like some really good energy drink that everybody's going to, want. So there's other, it had no business being on that list. Right. But it had, smart leaders, smart CEOs, competent people. I thoroughly disagreed with how they paid their employees. Obviously to me, I'm just thinking, I look back at that scenario and I think, guys, if you would have just paid me a normal wage or let me take my commissions, I'm the type of personality that would have just stayed out there for 10 years. Yeah. I only would have made $100,000 a year, but I would have brought you in probably 100 million. Yeah. But they because they're scratching in that last few pennies. Yeah. It was something like, I can't do this. Right. Yeah. I'm not even breaking even working here. Yeah.
Now there comes a time when the loyalty that is so deeply ingrained. Now, when you say your dad died when you were 4, you said?
Yeah. He had cancer. He owned he didn't own, but he was the CEO of a mining company, explosive company.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, kind of cool. But it was before my time. Totally different interests and skill sets than what I had, but he passed a long time ago. Yeah.
Well, and so I bring that up because it seems like there's a common thread, and this is just my observation in working with a lot of entrepreneurial or 1099 people. There's a story of a single mom for the most part where and there's this level of loyalty that is just fierce because of the mom thing. But then all of a sudden there's this switch where it's like, I'm not making any money being loyal to you. Yeah. And like, I'm starving. And then there's a switch of, I've got to be loyal to myself.
That's right.
And you venture out and you go get it. And it's not be selfish. It's just, dude, I got to figure this out.
Yeah. There's, it's a very common, honestly, the people that kind of grew up in some of these stories are some of the most phenomenal workers. There's one guy that I work quite a bit with. His name is Don. Mm-hmm. He works for Pattern, which is a Amazon accelerator. Basically, they're the world's number one reseller of products on Amazon.
Okay.
So they'll buy products from like a Sharpie.
Yeah.
And Sharpie would typically make like a 35% margin selling on Amazon. And then they come in and say, well, we have to take 15 of your 35, but basically because we have overhead and costs, but we have 30 trillion points of data, know how exactly how to do when the buy boxes, what type of imagery you should have. And so we can take 100 million of your sales to 800 million in sales. They're a crazy company. They'll be the most valuable company in the state of Utah within 2 years.
Pattern as well?
Pattern, yeah.
Wow.
Unreal. But
all they need is 15% at 800 mil. That's
yeah. So basically, so their profit's only 2%.
Yeah.
But what's interesting about it, they're just everything's just data points and making really smart moves. Because there's like a lot of people. Sorry, I'm going off on this.
No, I love this.
This is interesting.
Yeah.
A lot of people will on Amazon with their retail products, they'll try to buy keywords. Like they might say like, we are an organic toothpaste, and they're never going to actually win that, or they'll pay way too much for it.
Yeah.
When they can come back to you and they could say, actually, that's going to be way overpriced. What you want to say is organic kids toothpaste for sleepovers.
Okay.
And that has a big percentage of people that it's really cheap to buy, and the percentage that is actually going to be really impacted well. So they're able to accelerate brands really quickly because of the 30 trillion points of data. Anyway, So Don is a guy who is a master networker.
Okay.
And he works for them now. He's built a lot of other brands, but Don was just open enough. I was chatting with him yesterday. He's really articulate, really, really smart guy. And he works at the top of one of these big $1 billion companies. So you think, man, he has to have like a Harvard background or something like that, because his colleagues do,
Yeah.
And he's just like, no, actually, I grew in a trailer park with my grandma.
That's right.
But the thing is about Don is he had no safety net.
Yeah.
And so to him, everything was like, and I'll put it this way. I think people that are like myself, that are born with a little bit of anxiety, is actually a benefit in the business world. I mean, obviously too much of it's a disaster, but having that little extra motivation of like, well, I can't call my dad for money,
right?
Or I can't do X, Y, Z. That's actually been a huge blessing in my life.
I understand.
So thank you, anxiety.
I understand that like the buck starts and stops here. We got to figure this out. Yeah. So it's powerful. So from Goal Zero, is this where Volcanic Retail was born?
No, there's so many more pitfalls.
Okay, let's go.
So after Goal Zero, I went and worked it was a company called Kistix. They were Mark Cuban Shark Tank company.
Isn't it chapstick?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
It was sold on Shark Tank as a company that did a chemical reaction, and it was like pina colada and strawberry, and it made something, but really it was just two different flavors. There's no chemical reaction.
Okay.
I mean, the flavors were good.
Yeah.
We ended up doing well. We did. We won a White House Award for Best Small Business, and we had some great follow-ups to Shark Tank and everything else.
Yeah.
But it was a company that had it was a very ego-driven company. Not only ego-driven, it was driven by somebody who was really young, really talented, but he was 23, 24 years old.
Yeah. And
had really no clue what was going on, other than like, I remember that my first day there, it was the first day it aired on Shark Tank, the day after it aired on Shark Tank. And one of the founders that was on it came up to me and was like, man, he told me this afterwards, and it's kind of, I think this is very true with a lot of Shark Tank companies. They think that once they air, they can retire. Like they're going to get so many sales that everything is going to, they'll get so much attention. And if for 48 hours, that's true. That's the trajectory. And then there's nothing.
Okay.
Right. You might do $30,000, $50,000 worth of sales. You might get some retailers that organically reach out to you, but after that, you're off everyone's radar.
You still got to hustle.
Yeah. And it's like, well, that was a nice bump, but that's It's not the infusion that you think it's going to be.
Okay.
But that company had there was a broker that helped us get into Walgreens, which was really interesting.
Okay.
So, but the broker signed the paperwork as a pay on scan deal. And pay on scan in retail is like, it's just really bad terms. So like in retail, you get like net 30 terms where they pay you 30 days later, or really bad ones are consignment, which you know to stay away for. But Walgreens was so big and such a big part of their business that their order was bigger than their total revenue from the previous 12 months. Gotcha. It was only like 200 doors. Yeah. But the rep signed and said he's fine doing a pay on scan deal. And what a pay on scan deal is with Walgreens is we're never going to pay your first purchase order until we sell through your next purchase order. Oh. So you're always floating them free goods until 30 days after you exit out of the store. Yeah. So basically they had no money cash flow to live off of. And so there's so many examples of that where you're just like, man, one wrong negotiation off of a small point literally killed the business. Wild. It's just nuts.
Dude, that is wild. And this all goes back to what you were saying in the beginning of getting the degree and having, hey, I'm going to push carts for $4 an hour. If you don't know, you don't know.
You don't know.
And you just sometimes, if you get good mentors and you get good people in your corner, they can point out the blind spots. But I can't even tell you how many kicks in the face I've had where I'm like, I just didn't know.
You just don't know. Yeah. Well, so I started doing some stuff with Kiss Sticks, and I had a brand come to me, and this is the first time where I was actually making good money. Yeah. And because of the recognition of Shark Tank, we started working with Lori Greiner and other stuff, and Michael Jackson's daughter Paris and other stuff. Cool. Because of that, we had organically some people would come to us, and it came to me and said, well, could you consult for my brand? And I was so tied up for time and I always thought my value was $30 an hour at that point, right? Gotcha. I was so tied up for time that I'm like, I'm just going to throw out a huge number. And if they want to bite on it, great. Otherwise, I don't have time anyway. Yeah. And so I'm like, I think for 4 hours a month, I'll charge you $2,500. And they bid off and said, okay. And now I'm like, wait a minute. My value is, $600 an hour. It's not $30 an hour.
It just went from 30.
Yeah. Yeah. And I was like, this is ridiculous. So then all of a sudden I changed my business model to actually my value at that time, it was $600 an hour or whatever it is. And I got 1, 2, 3, and eventually I had 11 brands that were paying me that. Yeah. And I thought, this is crazy. Yeah. And so, that's what fed into Anthill Retail. And then from there, we helped over 600 brands. But what's interesting is those first few brands were very, not the world's best products. Right. So one of them was my favorite business partner, but she would admit it was on the Shark Tank. It was called Spatty. It was just a little spatula. Okay. That just got liquid makeup out of a jar, but it was a very, very simple, no product extensions or anything like that. But it was really hard for me to go sell these products because they just weren't products that you typically see in retail. And so I had to sell a lot of these. One of them was called Baby Bum Brush, which is basically a tool to put Desitin on a baby's butt. Yeah. But I was like, can you just squirt Desitin straight into the diaper, and that works too. Yeah. So, but my brands were not, it was hard because for a long time I had to sell brands that really didn't have a lot of business being in retail. Yeah. And eventually the brands became stronger and stronger and stronger. And now they're the world's biggest brands.
It's huge.
But it took 600 brands to get to that level, but there's so many pitfalls. Yeah. I don't think I've avoided any of them just because of my own stupidity. Yeah. I'm like, let's try. Oh, that was stupid.
So a question is just on the tip of my tongue. So when you're like, okay, $30 an hour, that's my time. Yeah. Now it's 600, and all of a sudden there's that shift of what your value is worth. Yeah. Like the pitfalls don't sting as much when your value is higher because you're like, oh, I got a little bit more wiggle room to learn from this. Yeah. Has that kind of been your experience?
Yeah. Yeah. It's the problem that comes with that is you're a lot better at managing money when you don't make a lot of money.
Oh, it's so true. And then as soon as it's there, you're like,
as soon as you make money, you make dumb moves all the time. And you feel almost like you did back when you could literally be making 30 times as much money, but you mentally, if you're doing it wrong, you could feel like you're as poor as back when you're making $30 an hour.
Or more poor because there's debt.
That's right.
And the debt's way bigger.
That's right.
Yeah.
And so the moves are a lot more drastic. It's like, the days you could overspend on huge things that you just had no business overspending on.
Yeah.
And then you have to kind of recorrect. You go through these economic downturns and now you're thinking, oh man, I'm going to be more financially disciplined this next time around. So you have to kind of buckle down a little bit.
Right.
But there's been those type of waves I think are probably pretty common.
I think they're, especially in Utah.
Yeah.
They're super common where you're like,
I'm living the dream.
Oh,
but
shoot.
but my take home is at the end of the year is like nothing. It's like, but that's kind of how it is. It's kind of crazy, but we all get undisciplined the more you get.
One of the most potent questions that was ever asked me is, what was your profit last year? And I was like, what do you mean? What was my profit?
Yeah.
I was like, we did 6 million revenue. And they're like, no, what was your profit? And I was like, what do you mean?
We don't talk EBITDA.
Yeah. What do you mean? And I was like, oh geez. And that having to look at it, it's like, okay, cool. I got to do it a little different.
It's very, very true. It's, there's a lot of companies that do, well, I'll just give you an example. A lot of the work I do with Costco. So I just put in, I think 8 or so national brands into them this year.
That's awesome.
So True Classic,
t-shirts.
they'll do 150 million this year in Costco. Bought a bunch of them, Bucked Up and Cozy Earth, and anyway.
Yeah.
But so Costco.
So you got bucked up into Costco?
Yeah. We've got a lot of great brands.
Have you ever had their Mother Bucker? You know what that is?
I have not had that, but I've done their pre-workout quite a bit.
So that's their pre-workout on steroids.
Oh.
It doesn't have steroids in it. I'm not saying Buckhead.
That'll get you pretty jacked.
Oh, dude. It's got 400 milligrams of caffeine.
Yeah, you're white.
I love it.
You're all in. Jill's all in on that one.
The Mother Bucker is so good. Dude.
Yeah, so Costco's so fascinating because Costco will do 280 billion in revenue this year. Mm-hmm. They're like the biggest brand maker that they're so much more important to you as a brand than any other retailer times 10.
Okay.
So because how many different people walk through the store? It's like 30 to 100,000 people that walk through the store every week.
Right.
And you're educating all of them on these road shows.
Okay.
So it's a massive brand builder. It's better than going into Walmart and sitting on a shelf and no one knows who you are.
Right.
So that's why I get so involved but they'll do $280 billion in revenue, and their total profit for the year will be $4 billion. And 3 of the $4 billion is off of their memberships.
Really?
So they only net profit $1 billion a year off of all the groceries that they sell.
So they're just a collective.
Yeah, it's crazy. But they're so calculated, and they're so the demand's so high that they can almost always guarantee profitability.
Yeah. But
it's never these wide margins. Like there's so many $1 billion companies, $100 million companies that have an EBITDA 0. People think that that they bring in. I mean, Utah. I don't know how many massive tech companies are only floated every year because of new investors. They just don't really. They're not profitable.
Right.
But their name is and their potential is, and the upside is, and their multiple is so high that people keep investing. But I think people would be shocked by how little some of these massive corporations actually bring home on the EBITDA side.
Yeah, I would not be shocked. I 100%.
Because they're like us. The more money you make, the more you're just going to spend.
Yeah.
And you have to be, and there's a founder's mentality of like, this is my money. I'm going to watch every penny. We're going to get this company off the hook. Just kind of blowing up. And then there's the new management mentality of, I just graduated from a good school. I'm going to come in here and now I'm going to be the one, a middle manager of Coca-Cola. And to you just see money sign everywhere.
Yeah.
And so they don't have the founder's mentality. Mm-mm. They get taken over by this kind of new wave. And then typically you just see companies really struggle because that initial mindset from the founder is gone.
The grit's gone.
Yeah.
It's just, we can rely on the grace of the grit.
That's right.
Before.
That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah. So and their budgets get massive and everything else. So it's very interesting.
Dude, it's pretty wild. I have some partners that I'm working with that I'm like, oh, that's exactly what's happening right now. Yeah, I can 100% see that. Dude, that's why. So Costco, I didn't have no idea they do so, and I had never thought of Costco as a road show, but it is, because you get the people in the booth, you get the Costco people, you get the people. He samples.
So Costco is fascinating because you've got 5 different ways to sell to Costco. You have an inline product. You've got your online, you've got your business centers, then you have online roadshow and inline roadshow. And those 2 are the most critical parts of Costco.
Okay.
So if you sell your product, it's, Costco wants a big value. They want 25 or 30% off of the lowest MSRP that you're going to have. And you have to pay for a third party to staff it. But there's brands that will go in and they'll sell $30,000 of unit per location every 10 days. Mm. And so what that does is, even though your profitability is very low, if anything, and you might just be breaking even, it drives an enormous amount of brand awareness and
an insane amount.
Yeah. And new customers. Your customer acquisition cost now for your brand is 0. Yeah. Because basically people are just buying on your website that you never knew were even customers. Wow. So it is enormously important. But there's a lot of pitfalls too with Costco roadshows. You just, if it's managed right, then it's pretty doable to do, but it could be a massive revenue generator.
Who did I meet when I was up there at the collective? She's from a private equity fund. She just moved to Utah. She moved to like Conwood Heights with the Zupas lady. She said she was working on some stuff with Costco with you.
Oh yeah. That would probably been Ivy City Co.
Somebody.
Kendra.
I think so.
Yeah.
Super nice.
Really, really nice.
And she spoke so highly of you, of like the wizardry you were playing with Costco. And I was like, who is this Jeremy guy?
No. These guys are it was so fun. That April event, we had the CEO of Stanley Drinkware, Matt Navarro is a good friend. We had the CEO of Skull Candy, the founder of Stance, the CEO of Little Giant Ladder, people from Mr. Beast and Dude Perfect.
Yeah.
CEO of Melon.
Yeah.
And then this next one coming up in September, we've got more crazy names. The CEO of Chuck E. Cheese. Chuck E. Cheese is fascinating, by the way. This guy who just took over Chuck E. Cheese, he was previously the president of Six Flags. Okay. And he said, do you know how many people go through a Six Flags every year? Mm. And I'm like, no. He's like, 26 million. Do you know how many go through a Chuck E. Cheese every year? Mm. It's 40 million. Okay. I'm like, you got to be kidding me. So it's like, but it's a very powerful brand, iconically, for the jokes that people make about Chuck E. Cheese and being a simple company. But it's anyway. So we've got people like that. We've got the CEOs of Cotopaxi and Loom, president of New Skin. We've got tons of big CEOs. And then in January, we have about 80 national brand CEOs speaking. And we're starting to book out next May. So Crystal Meglet, who's the CEO of Maverick and FJ, I think they do I think her net worth is like $8 billion or something. She'll be speaking on that one on May. But it's great. I mean, we'll have people we'll have the chief of staff of Mr. Beast. We'll have the head animation person for all of DreamWorks, CIO of Coca-Cola. We'll have the CEO of Dude Perfect. Yeah. But so it's fun because they don't really come to it not seeing people as competition. Yeah. But they see each other as collaborators and people that can help them with best practices. Yeah. Because what they realize is, like, we're going back to the Bucked Up example, right? So Bucked Up, a lot of people could say, well, any protein product is Bucked Up's competition in the state of Utah. Right. And it's just not true. Like, Just Ingredients' customer base or Holistic, they're not a competitor. Yeah. Right. Not even Mountain Ops, they sell to people like you and me who like to hunt and fish. Yeah. Really their only competition is someone like Clean Simple Eats, and that's not even a direct competitor. Right. And so when these people get into rooms, they realize, oh, we're actually not going after the same person. Right. Even if we both sell a very similar product, but there's thousands of different products in retail. Right. So the overlap percentage is super small. You really only have typically 1, 2, 3, or 4 major competitors, and everybody else out of the 6 million brands in the country are not competitors. That's wild. So if you collaborate with those other 6 million, then you're much better off to beat the 4 than you are if you're not collaborating with them.
Makes a ton of sense to me, man. Makes a ton of sense to me. Okay, so we've talked about some of the pit. We started out with the peak of what you're doing, how it's working. Like, if there was one piece of advice, if there's something you could pitch to the audience about they're wanting to venture out and be self-sufficient, they want that loyalty to themselves, and they want to add value, what would you pitch them?
The thing that's helped me the most is creating an ecosystem that touches the heads of entities, finding out what values them. So, like, one of the people that's on our board is the recent CEO of Beyond Inc., who owns Bed Bath & Beyond, Overstock, and others.
Okay.
And he sat up at the other one, the other event, and he just said to the members, he said, you know what's great about this event is, as CEOs, we surround ourselves with people that say yes to us all the time. And because of that, we make a lot of mistakes. But it's good to be surrounded by people that have no skin in the game at all, but uniquely know what it's like to be another CEO and the issues you face. And so that's kind of the value. So, like, if you're, I think, number one, I think podcasts are extraordinarily important, right? Because people get to know you without you actually getting to know them. Okay. So there's a lot of trust that is built on a podcast. Yeah. But running your own ecosystem where you can be valuable to the heads of entities in whatever ecosystem you're in is extremely valuable. Okay. Like, it's like a literal 10x. Everyone talks 10x. That's actually something that actually is a 10x.
We'll 10x it.
Yeah. That, and when I say 10x, I'm talking about your personal value of 10x it. Yeah. But yeah, I would just say, the best thing I ever did was create an ecosystem.
That's so cool. Yeah. So cool. Well, Jeremy, I actually have a ton more questions, but I was tardy to this for some stuff, and you have an appointment that's pressing, so we can wrap it up. But dude, thank you so much.
Thank you for having me on.
Yeah,
it's fun to sit down and get an hour just to talk to one person one-on-one.
It is fun.
And get to know them as an individual. And that's another benefit of a podcast is typically, being able to find an excuse. Like, if I called the CEO of, whatever company, Bose, if I said, hey, I want an hour and a half of your time just to talk, they'd be like, meh, no. Yeah. But if you say an hour and a half, come on my podcast, you get that opportunity to get to know that person on a really deep, lifelong level.
It's true.
You typically wouldn't have had.
I've loved doing the podcast just for that mere fact because success leaves clues. It leaves patterns. And if you can and there's little nuggets that if you just pay attention, you can pick them up, and all of a sudden you've got an indirect mentor.
That's right.
That you're like, oh, so 12% interest can hurt me. Yeah. Okay.
So should have had some of those.
Yeah. Some of those. So
thanks for having me on, man. This is an awesome opportunity.
My pleasure. Thank you for coming on, dude.
Thanks.